It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Arye Lewinnek.
I am Arye Lewinnek. I am born in Berlin in 1927 from a family. My father came from a very assimilated Jewish-German family, and my mother came from Frankfurt am Main, from an Orthodox family. Most of the people first about us. My father was a self-made man, a very successful stockbroker at the German stock market. He had a seat at the stock market. You see, he was not a speculator. He was buying bonds and things for the Reichsbank, for the state bank, among others. So it's interesting because he had a very high revenue every year. And that's interesting. It teaches us history. In 1923, he decided to buy a beautiful ground in one of the nicest streets in Berlin, next to the woods, and to build a house. That was interesting. This was in 1923. My grandfather told him, "Let it go, your ground, and invest your money in Switzerland." Wow. Can you imagine the foresight, the difference of outlook of a Polish? He came as a 13 years old boy from Poland. The outlook, the different, how he could, he knew, just to say story, that you need security, that you cannot count on the German. My father, but you know, my father's family, if you go back a few generations, then you have also a rabbi. Wow. You see? But slowly, slowly, they forget things. So my father bought a beautiful house of 14 rooms in one of the nicest areas. And I was born in 1927, and already, so they had a few nice years, beautiful furniture. You can see it on the diaspora memorial. They have all the pictures. And then, you know what happened? When they started with the Nuremberg laws, my father was really known as a top. And they dismissed him. You see, all the professionals lost their jobs. So we couldn't entertain such a huge house and servants, you know, chauffeur and governors for us, and a chauffeur. At that time, he loved cars, but at that time you needed your own chauffeur. Wow. But my father wasn't a snob. It just, I can afford it, and you needed the status of your profession. Then when he was excluded from the stock market, he had no more the high revenue. So we moved out of the house to a small villa, which was very nice too. Nice district. Small villa. Just with my governess. And this governess remained with us until I was 8 years. You know, there are a lot of evangelic nice people in Germany. And until they forced her, when we went to Belgium, after in '36, they forced her to come back in Germany. And then she never went into another family anymore and was in great misery and died in very great misery. So my father rented the house to a surrealist painter who Guggenheim got crazy about him, and he made an exhibition in our house, so we had a good renter. In '36, '34, things started to get bad, so we went for 6 months to Arosa in Switzerland. And my father and his brother were all Yekkes. They thought this will pass, this crazy guy will go. So we had a good time in Switzerland. And then an uncle told my father, you can come back. We came back to, you know, at that time you could stay in Switzerland. There was not a stamp Jew in your, they didn't put the stamp Jew in your passport. In the Swiss, I could have settled in Switzerland. But after when they put the stamp, and the German told them, so they could know who are refugees, and you couldn't go to Switzerland anymore. So we stayed another while, and happily, my mother, you know, also had a different outlook maybe. She had a sister with a Russian husband from Russia, and they went to Belgium. So we decided to also to leave in '37. We left for Belgium. And my father could still make on and off to Germany. At that time, it was still possible. But he had a very, very hard time to get adjusted to any other way of making a living. So we remained in Belgium until 1940. So you see, another friend of Larry wanted to know about Berlin. So I said, I don't have much about Berlin.
Arye, Kristallnacht, you were in Belgium. You weren't in Germany during Kristallnacht.
Yeah. So we were in Belgium, in Brussels. My mother spoke very well French because she was in a pensionnat as a young lady, as a young girl. And my father, slowly, he left Germany, but still, we didn't have, we didn't take a fortune with us. Not at all. We had a very hard time. And now comes 1940. That's my experience, my main experience. In 1940, Germany invaded France. And many people were very frightened. There was an exodus to France. But you see, all the people run to the railway station, to the trains, and we went also with already a few days before, they arrested all German ex-citizens. So my father disappeared. And later we learned that he was shipped in cattle wagons, closed cattle wagons, several days to the south of France in a very bad camp called Cyprien Plage on the Mediterranean near Perpignan. But we didn't know about it yet. So we left, my mother, my sister, I had a little older sister, and also some other relatives, but anyhow, about us, we wanted to go into the train and then suddenly say, oh, the foreigners, out. They arrested the German Jews, they arrested the Polish people, most of the foreigners, not just German, because of the fear of what they called fifth column. You heard about the fifth column? And they put it one day in jail, and happily my mother struggled to keep me because they wanted to put me with unknown men. And next day they put us in cattle wagons. Happily we had some provisions which we took with us. And then went several days, slowly, the exodus, and each time the train stopped and let it pass other trains and bombs. And finally we arrived in another camp. This was a men's camp. In another camp near Pau, near the Pyrenees, near the Atlantic. And this was a woman's camp. Larry, a friend, brought me a very book about the shame of girls, of this camp de girls. And next to you, but we are separated with barbed wire, was a camp of the Spanish refugees. Because maybe you know, when Franco won the war, all the Republicans, they fled. And days and days over the Pyrenees, there's chains of mountains, very bad. They came extenuated. And they said, when we arrived, we gave jewels to get some bread. And there we were forced to build the camp of Gurs. When they came, they just digged in the ground somewhere, in very bad circumstances. And this was already through the government of Léon Blum. In '36, the Spanish refugees. You see? I think '36, '37. But naturally, later on, there were also, many of them were deported, but the Spanish, there was not this ancestral hatred of the Jews, of extermination. It was a political enemy. And then a lot of nisim happened to our family. And now I am 94. All the time it's giving thanks to Hashem for everything. It's unbelievable, all the goodness which happened to us. From very bad, we are always saved at the last minute. This camp was locked up. But the day of the armistice, you know what's armistice? When the Vichy regime made the armistice with Germany, there was a tremendous joy all over France. Not the Gaullist, you know, but a majority. And during these days, the guards of the camp, I think they went out to jubilate for this liberation. And suddenly the camp was open. Unbelievable. So we took our luggage and went out. But we heard already before from the Red Cross that the men were in the other camp on the other side of France. You see? You know Perpignan. So we took the train and arrived there in Perpignan, but also we just had a few dollars with us. We had no means, you know. We had $100 with us, that's all. So we found my father in this Perpignan camp under very strong. We met outside in a certain place under it's a place where they were the heat was very, like here right now. The heat was very strong. And my father couldn't get out of this Perpignan camp. So we took, at that time, now you find Cyprien Plage in French, you know, is a very nice place with the sea. But at that time, there are only bamboo huts. In the village, there was only one house in stone, the grocery, and a castle somewhere, and all others were many of the Spanish people who were already free. I don't know if they were really coming from Spanish or Catalonia, you know? So they were very close with the Spanish refugees, about the same language also, and they were wonderful with us. The poorest people are always the best.
Arye, can I ask, when you met your father, when you saw your father again, when you met your father,
yeah,
was it very emotional? You had been separated for so long. It must have been very emotional, very special when you saw your father.
No, it wasn't long. It was in May. It's still the month of May, I think.
But was it very emotional to see your father again, to know that he's alive?
Sure, sure. My father was very stoic. He never complained. But I tell you later. So we tried to stay near my father. So we rented a little wood house, like a cabin for the summer, with 2 rooms, cooking outside on the sand. And also all these camps, they're full of puces. You know what's puce?
Yeah.
In French. And we didn't have any money anymore. So my father we could visit him from time to time. And then came all the calamities. In the south of France, first there was a fire. All these nice Spanish people who had a little bamboo house. You know, they had a bamboo house on the ground, on the sand, burned down completely, just behind us. So we're very much afraid. And these wonderful people, they build quickly, they build another, another house. And then my mother got dysentery, blood dysentery. And these Spanish or Catalonian people, local people, they brought us a Spanish pharmacist, and he gave to my mother, at that time there was no antibiotics, little red pills, sulfamide I think, or something like that. And happily she survived. Then there was another incident. In south of France, every year there's a big inundation of a river. And it came all over, and the water went up. So we all took refuge in the only stone, a little cattle or something like that. We took refuge there. And then what happened in the camp, the French people, the guardians, they all ran away, and they said, you can leave the camp to hide, to save yourself, but if you don't come back, you'll be in
handcuffs.
Cuffs like this. And then the water went up. It was in a stone house, and suddenly we saw my father in the water with a few people, just a few people, in the water up to here with a big stick, walking like Moses in the Nile, you know. He came to join us. But you know, being a Yekker, and where will we go? Where will you hide? Where will you have a permit of stay? So he went back after the inundation, he went back. That's one thing. Then happened, so there was a lot of typhus and things like that, because of bad conditions. It's not concentration camp like in Germany, but very bad. And also the Vichy regime, you know, they're very big anti-Semites, very great anti-Semites. I must say one thing. There have been a lot of Jewish heroes, but we didn't know them at that time. A lot of Jewish, even later when it gets into trouble, they saved lives, and many of them sacrificed themselves. But that's another story, the story of the Jewish resistance. So my mother went with some other people to the Jewish community in Perpignan trying to get some help. We didn't know at that time. Now I know that the Joint sent money all the time through Switzerland to trustees in France. So it was, but we were not informed. Anyhow, she went to the Jewish community, and there happened a miracle. They asked her, because at that time they still tried to get people out to Portugal if they had a visa or something. After it was not allowed anymore. Have you got any relatives? So my mother says, sure. I have 2 cousins in Sweden. And the name is Huttner. They said, what? You are relative of Emil Huttner? He's leading the whole help for refugees in Sweden. They were cousins of my grandmother, my mother's mother, and they were big philanthropes. And his brother, so he started right away sending us a monthly allowance from heaven. My mother didn't think about asking them, you know. And in the meantime, they transferred all the men from Perpignan to the former Saint-Cyprien, Gurs, where we have been, where we came from. You see, they transferred them all over there. So we were separated again from my father. And we couldn't get him. And another wonderful thing, my mother had a brother who was living in Chamonix near the Swiss border. You know Chamonix? Chamonix Mont Blanc,
yeah.
Mountain.
The mountain.
Yeah. This brother was married to a very wealthy woman who was British, from a diamond family who are trading diamonds in Belgium. So they had a very easy life. And look, instead of going from Belgium back to England, she was British. They thought we'll go to Chamonix because people all believed there is a Maginot Line, yeah, and the German will not pass. De Gaulle told them, don't rely on it. And surely they had a nice house in Chamonix. It was very nice, very pleasant. But in principle, they didn't even admit foreigners in the border departments. All the departments were closed to foreigners, you know. This is border, this is this, this is that. So, first my sister went to join the uncle, and then my mother and me also went to Chamonix without asking permission. But my father was still stuck at Gurs. So the brother of this Huttner, also a very wealthy man, he was honorary consul of Costa Rica. Years. The Swedes are very They like honor, you know. Also in Denmark, a little like in Germany. Herr Director, and so Herr Director's wife.
Wow.
So he went to see the French ambassador in Sweden, in Göteborg, to send a message to the chief of department near Gurs, chief of the whole area, and saying that Mr. Huttner guarantees for this family very honorable family, father who is interned in the camp, and he's made a gift to the French Red Cross. I don't know, like that. When they received this, they asked my father permission to leave the camp in résidence forcée, forced residence in a village outside, which means you had to check with the police. So my father was already out. And then after a while, we didn't ask for it, he came to join us in Chamonix, which means we were, again we were, my mother, my sister, my father. And there we had my uncle with his children, and I had another uncle who was a Yugoslav citizen who came also after to join us in Chamonix. Now in Chamonix for 1 year was wonderful. You know Chamonix? We had rented a little house. We got every month from Sweden. And my father, when he came to join us, he had lost 30 kilos. Malnutrition.
30 kilos.
Yes. Now I started again to go to school on a very low, they had only low classes in Chamonix. My sister was already 18.
And how old were you at this time? How old were you at this time?
I must have been 16. 16 and was still in primary school. Anyhow, I went to school. Happily, my sister was 18 and blooming, beautiful and charming and outgoing. And in Chamonix, really, it was wonderful, because in winter time there was a skating and skiing. So my sister made a lot of friends. She was, you know, very sociable, and very attractive. And skating, she met some people, and she met the judge. You know, every city has a little judge. A judge, men about 40 or so, and another who are more Gaullist, you see. They are not Vichy people. And he was very fond of my sister, but very respectful, you know. She was young. She invited even my parents and me to his home. And there were also another few friends. and they saved us. And another occasion, another Nissim.
They weren't Jewish.
Hmm?
They weren't Jewish.
No, not at all. But they were Gaullists. But very few people at that time. They are all Pita. At school we had to sing Maréchal, nous voilà, we the young people of France, like this, every morning. So, another miracle. In summer, there was a swimming pool. And she met two Jewish Israelite French girls from Lyon. You know, this was the foreign Jews. They were the foreign Jews, and then they were the French Jews. You call themselves Israelites. It's more distinguished. And they were not threatened yet. The first year they are not threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So she met these girls, and I don't know how they kept my sister's address. And I never met them. But suddenly, I think it was a year later or so, we got a letter from these girls. The night of 24 of August at midnight, you should go and see the eclipse or something, the stars on the mountains. So we forgot something, so we realized something was happening. How they thought, you know, first, how they knew it. I think they must have been part of the French scouts who were doing a very wonderful resistance. And the chief of them was the founder of the AIF, Éclaireur Israélite de France. He had connections with Vichy because he was a polytechnical and a captain in the army. He had connections. Anyhow, they saved us. And we never heard anything about them anymore. So, and we didn't realize, most of the Jews didn't want to realize.
But Arye, why did they want you to see the eclipse? What was the reason to see the eclipse on the mountain? Why did they want you to see it?
My father?
The eclipse on the mountain. They said there was going to be an eclipse on the mountain with the moon.
The mountains?
With the moon and the eclipse. Why did they want you to see it? The mountain with the moon.
This was just
a code. It was a code.
Just to make us understand to run away, to hide.
Oh, this was their code to hide away.
You see?
They warned you. They actually warned you.
She warned us to go out.
To leave, and they did it in case the letters would have been found and censored. It could have been censored.
Censorship.
Wow.
You see how they saved us?
Wow.
So my father, and in fact, they only arrested first the men. My father and my mother went to hide with this judge and another friend who was very fond of my sister, a French non-Jew from Nyssa. And the next day, so I stayed home with my mother, and my Yugoslav uncle came to protect us. And at midnight they came. Where is Mr. Lewinnek? And mountains. Ah, they've been warned. But I ran away to hide myself. My bed was open, but they didn't bother about us. They first arrested the men. I don't know why. And they arrested even my uncle, who had friends with the police, who was married to the English lady. They took him.
Was this the French Vichy that arrested?
It's the milice. This was not the police. It was the collaborators called the milice.
And they were French?
They were French volunteers for the German. And there was a gathering in Lyon, I think, and they made even selections. So my Yugoslav uncle went down and got him out. Unbelievable. You see, they liberated certain people. I don't know why. Why? He told them that he saved a lot of French people as an interpreter, and anyhow he got them out. So already next day, my sister came, hidden in the car of this judge, and said quickly, she and me must be first to be saved to Switzerland. And this judge found us a smuggler of cigarettes. You know, he was a judge. A smuggler who went over the high mountains each time to fetch cigarettes and bring them back. So very quickly, we both left first. And this is what traumatized me the most. You see, really. About 2 days. This traumatized me a lot. And then, thanks Hashem, my parents with my Yugoslav uncle, they also, but I don't know why, they took another guide and they came. And they joined us in Switzerland. It's a real miracle.
Where were you in Switzerland? Which part of Switzerland? Which town? Or
Lausanne.
Lausanne, wow.
So after, I will tell you a bit more about the mountains. It's high mountains, not to be catched. Very high mountains, 3,000 meters. And when we arrived in Switzerland, just the last, when we went, we were already halfway up. There was a tremendous thunderstorm and rain and horrible. We had to go down. Another miracle, there was a little village there. And my sister, she had a lot of connections with friends. I think it was a Jewish family. We came complete, we wouldn't have survived, you see, like this. We went there, and all I remember, they put me in a very soft bed, and I slept until next morning. first that he knew people there.
It's a miracle.
It's unbelievable.
A miracle.
A little village. You see, one miracle after the other. And next day, you know, very often the guides let people go. That he came back.
Mm-hmm.
He took us back, and then we escalated Mont Buet. Mont Buet is between Switzerland and France. Escalation like that. And at the end, there is a throughway with a lot of stones, big stones, and a little that you could go over the other side of the mountain. And then we went down. And when we went down, we walked a little bit. He said, now I must take my cigarettes over here somewhere. And he said, you just go there this way and you arrive in a city with a train. We didn't found anyone. We arrived there at night and went straight to the railway station. There are some drunken soldiers, but there are no guards. It was just... And we waited on the bench until next morning. We took the train to Lausanne. Why? Because my sister, again, she had the address of some evangelists. You see, because in Chamonix she knew an English lady who was giving English lessons, and she had connections with, you know, there are a lot of good Christians there, especially in the French section. We went to one place, there was nothing. Then we went to another one, to a pastor who was running a little pension for people who wanted to relax and also to pray. They didn't do anything to influence us, you see?
They didn't want to convert or anything?
Nothing. There was even one old man, a friend of them, who was with the Ethiopian negus. You see, you remember?
Yeah.
For many years. And they didn't try. They gave us a Bible, and at night they were singing, and we were looking also, but we didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
We just said Hashem. And then, thanks God, my parents arrived. But another miracle. Normally, all the people, even rich people, were first shut in a camp in Switzerland. Not like in France,
Yeah.
but there are some working camps for younger people. It's normal because they needed. The peasants needed help. They brought us to the military police, and there was there a captain doing his, like in Israel, you know, his few months every year.
Reserve.
They have the same
Yeah.
as in Israel. And he used to be a banker. And I showed them the letter from Sweden, you see. So he says, I won't put you in a camp, you'll stay with Breches, with this family. And when my parents came, and they took another way which was horrible. I don't know exactly, but another way to come over. And when they arrested at the border, they were taken by the... And happily, my mother had a breakdown. They put her in a hospital. And the man, so next day this captain said, send them to Lausanne. With 2 soldiers, they escorted to come to Lausanne. And he freed them. And then there was a whole process that was Bern to get the permission to stay. And my Swedish relatives, he was dealing with Swiss watches, and one of his correspondents here in La Chaux-de-Fonds, every month he sent us an allowance. Wow. So we stayed for 2 years in Switzerland.
And what year was this, Arye? What year was this? Was this after the war or still during the war?
No. This was until 44.
So it was still during the war?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So in 44, we repatriated, all the people were repatriated to those from Belgium, back to Belgium. But I had started to study at the University of Geneva. And I didn't join them. I thought I could finish my studies. But then, wow, the chief of police, crazy guy, he threatened me so much that I must leave Switzerland immediately. There was no repatriation trains anymore, you see? And to go back, I needed a visa without stop through France. And this French consulate, they insulted me. They were still Vichy people. I couldn't get a visa. I was very panicked. And finally, I had to take, first time in my life, a small airplane.
Wow.
Very small, you know, after the war, maybe with 15, 20 people. And then after 6 months, I came back officially to Switzerland to study some more.
That was after the war?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This was already after the war.
Wow. And Arye, so where did your family live? Did they go back to Belgium? Did your family remain in Belgium?
Look, we were privileged because we arrived in Belgium in 36, 37, something like that, and we had the 2 years permit of stay. That's the best you can get. All the other refugees got a 6 months. So yeah, most of the people who are residents could go back.
And where in Belgium did your family stay? In which city in Belgium? Were they in
Brussels.
In Brussels.
And then it was not so easy to start again for my father. And my sister got married in the meantime. So in the I don't know, what happened is we really wanted to go to Israel. My father didn't figure He was already old, and he got a very bad sickness. Would have been terrible. I would have gone to the army, and my father passed away 6 months later, but not in Belgium. In the meantime, my sister met again in Belgium a girlfriend whose father was only the one person, very few, who were admitted during the war in Canada.
Sure.
And that's, you know, that Canada said one too much.
One Jew is too many Jews.
One too much. And then they opened the doors.
After the war.
Also a lot of fascists got in. So he sent, he sponsored about 50 people to come to Canada. First my sister and her husband and baby. And 6 months later I came, and a few months later my parents. And my father passed away 6 months after arriving in Montreal. And there I stayed about 8 years. I worked You see, I studied psychology, education, and also vocational guidance. So I worked for 8 years at a Jewish community, Jewish vocational service. But they used me mainly for all the newcomers who spoke French or German.
These were mainly survivors. Survivors, mainly survivors that came to Canada. Mainly survivors that came. The newcomers were mainly survivors.
They came from all over.
All over, yeah. All over Europe.
I received all the Hungarians, but this was much later.
And Arye, what happened to the rest of your family? What happened to your mother's family and your father's family?
Look, my father had a nephew who got a visa before the war to Australia. He was very gifted, but he was advised just to take a textile training. And they wanted people who knew about weaving and you know, for the wool. So they gave a few visas to a few people in Germany before the war. And after a while, he sponsored his mother, his widow mother, to come over, a sister of my father. Another uncle, another brother of my father, escaped also at the last moment to Belgium. And he was also in Camp de Gurs. And happily he got out somehow. So there were 6 siblings, there were 6 in the family. My father, the uncle, and the sister in Australia. 3 were saved, and 3 were one couple committed suicide before being deported, and the others were deported. They couldn't move out of Germany.
Do you know where they were deported to? Do you have any records, or do you know where they were deported to? To which camps they went to?
No, we have everything. And we made, with a cousin in Australia, we made a Stolperstein.
Oh, that's the brass, yeah.
Before the door.
Yeah, it's the stepping stone. Where they have the name and the who lived in the houses. it's a brass stepping stone. They have it all in Europe, in many places in Europe. In Austria, Slovenia, they even have it in Ljubljana.
Ah, and I had a wonderful doctor of the poor people of the, you see, who remained there too long in Berlin. He was married to a sister of my father, who was very young, very beautiful, and he died the first year of marriage. And he didn't remarry anywhere, anyhow, afterwards. He came every Sunday to play chess with my father. And he had relatives who went to Shanghai, and when he decided at the last moment also to try to go to Shanghai was no more possible. And he was deported to Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia.
And he didn't survive. He didn't survive.
No. He got a sickness and he died.
And Arye, from your mother's family?
My mother's family, they were also 6. So there are 3 brothers. The one who became a Yugoslav, who married the daughter of a very high military man from the who was very close to the king. So they made him Yugoslav passport. But she went back home during the war, and he went to escape to France. And he escaped with my parents. And the 2 who were settled in Switzerland, who were very good conditions, they were offered to go to Mexico. They didn't want to go to the border to go to a consulate to get a visa. You see, they didn't realize. They didn't realize, and finally they tried also to escape to Switzerland, but too late. It was already winter, near winter. They were frozen in a snowstorm. Both.
And they died.
Yeah. And the children came to through another way, through a very easy way, but a dangerous way. With a Swiss lady took them out, and they joined us, the 2 orphans. And then she had a sister who remained, who wanted to escape with us, but remained in Belgium, hidden. And another sister who went out with us, and she got caught in the camps and deported with her husband.
And they didn't survive?
No.
Oy, oy, oy.
No, they're right away exterminated.
Oy, oy, oy. And Arye, when you were in Switzerland, did you ever meet or hear about Reche Sternbuch?
Did I survive?
Did you ever meet Reche Sternbuch or hear about Reche Sternbuch?
I don't know.
Did you ever meet Reche Sternbuch?
Who is he?
A woman, Reche Sternbuch, or the Sternbuch family?
Ah, Sternbuch, yes, I heard a book. Yeah.
Did you ever meet her?
No.
But with the Jewish community, were you involved with the Jewish community in Switzerland?
They were, with us, they were very good. When we came as children, the head of the Jewish community, what was her name, Dreyfus, I think, they are good to us. and very friendly with my mother also when they came over. But a lot of children, which I know through aluminium, they were separated even by the Red Cross in Switzerland from the parents. And they placed the children with peasants and with goyim. And I don't think that there were so many Jews who were ready to, I don't know, to take them. But I know a lady here who was very young and she suffered a lot when they separated her. You know, when the captain made a request in Bern for us to remain, before that, they wanted to send me somewhere in the German part of Switzerland and my sister to another part. You see? It's only thanks to him and also to a very good doctor. You see, my mother had, as she was young, she had a very huge operation here, abscess on the kidney. And the doctor, a very great doctor, said, I don't want to take out a kidney of this young woman. He tried to take out, and she survived. So when she came to eat during the war, she always said, I have only one kidney. So a very nice doctor, military doctor, he also said in Lausanne, I would send you, you should stay home and you should be taken care of your daughter. Anyhow, they arranged that we'll never be interned in Switzerland.
Wow.
But now that I know, with all the underground in France, they did a lot. And there are a lot of different organizations.
Wow. And Arye, if I had to ask you, what message would you give? What message would you give?
To?
What message would you give to the future generations? What can we learn from your unbelievable experience and what you went through?
Exactly what I told you before. You see the outlook. There is one writer called Sperber. He was actually Jewish from Austria, but communist at that time. He fought in Spain. And later he settled in France. And he said one thing: the Jews suffered from too good, enthusiastic optimism.
Wow.
Right. Well, we have learned that you should not trust anyone. I thought the only exception in our history was, I say was, America. The melting pot in America. The Jews were not the same situation. Why they are not persecuted? Well, there was anti-Semitism and this and that. And then now, I think now, It's the same as all over.
It's changing. It's changing.
What's
yeah.
happening now?
Yeah.
And now after this virus, I don't know, the whole structure of the world went. And also, it renewed the hatred. Terrible. And the accusation that we are spreading, instead of saying the Jews is the light of the nations. And instead of it, we are accused of the worst thing. Now this Trump is a miracle for us, but who knows if it will last. If he will not last, my goodness.
So you are worried for the future. You are, but thank God you're living in Israel. Did you always want to come and live in Israel? Was it always a dream to come and live here? You mentioned your parents wanted to come here after the war.
Look, I started when I was 18 or so to read about Jewish things. And because I was actually, my sister found it in Switzerland, she was in the Hanua Razioni, a youth movement, a very liberal Zionist movement. They are no more now. They are a general Zionists.
Yeah.
Maybe you remember that at one time.
Yeah.
And when I was young, she took me with her, and it didn't attract me because I was interested in other things. You know? It's only after my war experience, and then I started to read when I was 18, and I even made one my special diploma about compared education of Jewish education in the world. So I started to look in old Zionist journals and everything. That's from that time I was close to Israel, but not ready for Aliyah. And when we came to Canada, there was such a difference from Europe, especially in the Jewish community, a proud community. Jews who didn't hide their Jewish names, like Moshe, my friends. Moshe, and I don't remember, they would have never dared to have a name like this in Belgium. So and then I went to Hillel Foundation. You see?
Yeah.
So I was very grateful and happy to be in Canada, and a free country without identity cards at my time. You didn't need an identity, just a driver's license to go to America.
Yeah.
And I felt also that you could go anywhere and say in any hotel and give another name. You see, we are not identified. And suddenly I had an experience, it's very traumatic, which destroyed everything. On a drive, outside, a little drive, and it was already dark in the evening, I passed in a county. You know, there are also counties like in America. And I didn't see, there was a police station just on the side. and they claim that I passed over the line. There was a line. They arrested me like a thief. And they asked me $100 fine. I didn't have $100 on me. It's quite an amount. So they put me in jail, wow, in the local jail, with a drunkard, you know, and this was my traumatized, because it reminded me how we were locked up. I couldn't say claustrophobia. I cannot stand, even now, I have a bit of claustrophobia. And I cried, and so they asked me, I asked to call behind the bars to not to my mother, to my sister. And happily my sister, she's over there. And her husband and a friend, they were very close friend with a lawyer, who is an engineer. They came immediately, paid the $100 and freed me. And then I said, now I'll have to appear in the court in Montreal. And then I learned, I had a very good friend, also a refugee, who became a judge, and then a high judge in Ottawa. He made a sensational, anyhow, at that time he was only a small judge in Montreal. He was a criminal lawyer. He said, you fall in the hands of the mafia. This county is known as a mafia. And you cannot do anything because they support the government. You know, they vote for the, was a Duplessis government at that time, very bad, government, but they had a lot of mafia working for them. So my sister said, we must publish this in a newspaper, and this. I said, no, stop. I don't want to be sacrificed. And I thought I was waiting to be called at a court in Montreal. Then I'm missing in my life. I had a very good friend, a couple from Israel. And he was a man of all trades, repairing radios, and you know, he knew a lot of families and a lot of people. He says, wait, I have a connection with a man from the mafia. You are going to meet him tomorrow in St. Lawrence, the street, in the middle of the city, in a little bar. And next day I came, yes, with a gun here. He said, come with me. He took me to the head of the provincial police. There are a lot of people sitting there. And straight in, he went to the director with me. And the director asked me, is it a question with women or so? I said, no. He called up the little police station, erase it. Finish. Thank you very much. Then he says, this mafia person, okay, it's finished. you can go home. It's finished. I called my friend, the Israeli friend, and he said, now you just buy a big bottle of whiskey and bring it to this mafia man. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Then I saw, corruption and, how do you call it, with women. There was a lot. It's not so beautiful as I thought.
But Arye, you know, I just want to mention your experience, what you went through. You saw a lot. You suffered a lot, and you saw a lot, and you lost family, and you lost your childhood in a way. You really did.
No.
But you remained. You were a kippah. Did you always keep your emunah? Did you always keep your faith?
I always had emunah.
That's your faith. You always believed in Hashem.
You see, since my father was not, he was not against religion. He was respectful, but he knew nothing. Unbelievable. Maybe he didn't even make a bar mitzvah, I think. So he was not practicing anything. So my mother, slowly, she didn't do kashrut, she didn't, but she kept the big holidays. We never made Christmas at all, never. We made Hanukkah, Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, you see?
Yeah.
And my father was respectful. And during the war, before the war in Belgium, they're not like today, Chabad all over.
Yeah.
To go to the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, we had to take the tramway.
Wow.
It was only one big synagogue in Brussels. Now my religion, I had a governess. Like a nanny. And in the evening, my mother was very modern. I see she liked very much Joachim Prinz. I don't know if you heard about him. He was a liberal rabbi. And after we left in the 36, assimilated people were flocking to Joachim Prinz. He was also a big Zionist, but he betrayed at the last moment. He went to America and became president of the Jewish Congress, I think. He was a very important man, but he had a lot of charisma. So my mother was quite modern. I don't understand why. She didn't teach me Shema Israel, but a little prayer in German. You know German?
From Yiddish.
Ich bin klein, mein Herz ist rein, soll niemand drin wohnen als Gott allein. It's nice.
Can you translate it for the listeners? Could you translate? Into English what you just said? I've been.
Ich bin klein, I am small. My heart is clean.
It's clean.
Should never anyone else be inhabiting than Hashem alone.
Wow.
It's nice. And it's very known German, probably many German used to say the same. This was until 13, when I had to have my bar mitzvah. We were deported to France. So I didn't have the bar mitzvah. But probably my mother thought about it because maybe a year or two before, she took a teacher at home to come private to my sister and me, but it has been completely erased from my conscience. She remembered the name and everything. I don't know. You know, there are things when they are very emotional that you erased. I don't remember. Maybe, you know, wasn't the right way. Perhaps he wanted to prepare me for the bar mitzvah. And maybe when he took me, I never saw Tali. I never, well, in the great synagogue, I never saw Tfilim in my life. I think maybe this traumatized me. It was not the right way to prepare, certainly. But my mother made beautiful Chanukah always. And Pesach also. But all the other holidays, no Purim, no.
And do you remember the synagogue in Berlin? Do you remember the synagogue in Berlin?
Never. I went in Belgium on Rosh Hashanah. And mainly, and it was difficult because I was far away. And after the war, I tell you, so, but when we went to escape to Switzerland, I think my mother gave us a little Hebrew with Shema Yisrael. You see? But then happened something. You see, my sister in Switzerland, she started again Hanoi Ratzioni, and we had a lot of students from Italy, from very nice people, and they mounted the book and things like that. But I was very timid, very, very timid, and I also remained. I wasn't sociable until this came much, much later. But then happened something which changed my life also. 3 rabbis from Hungary in Switzerland during the war. You know the Klausner case. You know his story. Suddenly, during the war, the end of the war, came 400 or 500 Jews from Hungary, which Eichmann allowed to come to Switzerland.
On the Kastner train?
Yeah.
The Kastner train?
Yeah. You know, this is a long, long, long story. As a gesture. But you know, the Joint didn't want to pay $1 million also. And in this group, there was not Kastner, I think he remained. There was a selection of very different people. He even brought out one Hasidic Rebbe.
Was the Satmar Rebbe?
Yeah, Satmar Rebbe.
And Jungeras, there was Jungeras, the Satmar Rebbe.
And they got in Montreux, you know Montreux in Switzerland, beautiful place, on the mountain, in a big resort. There's 500 people, so they stayed there but they shut in, you know, more or less shut in. They couldn't, they to ask for permission. And we, as a Zionist organization, we went to visit them. And there, I met, it was very heartbreaking. There was one girl of 16, beautiful, and she was singing, "My Städtel brennt, my Städtel brennt."
My shtetl is burning.
Very heartbreaking. And we invited them, if they got permission, to come to Lausanne. And one of them, the three rabbi neologue. You know what's neologue? The liberal.
More modern, they were more modern.
And maybe you know, it's the only way you could make a PhD.
If you were, that's true.
And become a rabbi in Jewish studies. And there were three rabbis. Wonderful people, very distinguished. And one of them took a special interest in me, I don't know why. We became very friendly, and we invited him. And they changed my life. Because I lost a lot of schooling. So normally I would finish the school, I don't know, at 20 or so. Couldn't afford this, our situation. So I went to different private schools, you know, to push, especially to push youth for the baccalaureate. But I flunked it. I flunked it totally. I wasn't prepared after so many years. But I got very good marks. The mark, no, bad marks, but wonderful observations. You see? Among these three, there was one who was also, there was a very famous professor, Lipot Zondi, a psychiatrist, and genealogy, genetics, hereditary. And as soon as he arrived in Switzerland, they liberated him. Amazing. And he could go and work in Zurich. And one of these rabbis, he studied, was a bit of an assistant of him, like psychology. So my friend, Sher, Latzi Sher, he asked this Bela Kohn, was his name, to test me, because he has learned a certain test from this Lipot Zondi. So he tested me with a special method, and also the Rorschach test. You know, Rorschach test. It's not scholastic, people. It's not. And the Professor Zondi, without seeing me, he said I should go to university and I should learn psychology, education, something like that, philosophy. So thanks, my mother also did a lot for me. She didn't resign. She didn't resign, she always helped me to go ahead. we went to the famous university in Geneva. And I spoke to one of the educational directors and showed the testimonial on me and also my mark, and admitted me at university on a special, not right away, but a special diploma, you know, for teachers and things like that. And he spoke to the director, the famous director of psychology, which name was Piaget. I don't know if you heard about him. He's well known.
Very well known. Yeah.
Today he's well known, but at that time
He wasn't.
only in Switzerland. And they both were very nice with me. And that's why I try to remain in Switzerland. And unfortunately, I lost touch with this Cher because he was the initiator of everything. And he was a fervent, he told me, he had lost faith. You know? He had lost faith. But still, he couldn't get a visa for Israel before the Declaration of Independence. He was an ardent Zionist. So they offered him a job as a rabbi in Chile. A good job. And we remained to Belgium, and we had just a contact from Belgium and Chile. And then one day he told me, I am taking a group of Zionists, and we are going, after the foundation of Israel, to Israel. And then, unfortunately, I lost contact. But I'm very grateful to him. And Bella Cohen, who spoke to the professor, she was other type, more. He studied, went back to Hungary, studied medicine, and went also to Canada, but I didn't know him. I didn't know. But the third one, very fine, distinguished man, Senesh, Michael Senesh. I think he was married to some kind of a lady from America, who had a visa for America. Anyhow, he got to America, and only many years later, I was friendly with another wonderful friend who was a liberal rabbi. And I asked him, look up if this rabbi, and he found his name near New York. He was already honorary retired rabbi of a little community near New York. I wrote to him. But this was very, very late. And he told me that he was going to come to Israel, but then his wife got sick. Right. And then he said, and my friend, the number one, passed away in Israel this year. So I didn't know that he was, I lost, and you know, sometimes you need time to remember. Yeah. When comes the remembrance. It's I have a little book there. When knowledge comes also the remembrance. And also, when you look more backwards than forwards, you see then many things come back to you. So I regret very much that I got married here in Israel, and he was living in Haifa.
Sure. And how many years have you been living in Israel?
Look, we got married in 56. In 56, but before that I had a lot of musicians. I had a 2 years marriage with 2 children, not for me, 2 a widow. I should have married her. I'm a Cohen from Persia, Israel and Persia, with a very different mentality and very pathological. At the same time, my mother in Canada broke down with a terrible sickness. 2 years to live. So I had a lot of frictions. You know, I married someone just because I'm very, if you're not so timid, you talk more. You talk in advance. You talk more talking than looking. This was horrible. And then my mother passed away. And then, thanks God, I left Canada. So you see, I had the first experience.
Wow.
This was before. The second experience, 2 years married, and my mother dying, and I took care of my mother until the last moment. Until the last
breath.
Yeah. She had ILS, I think they called it ILS or something like that. They cannot talk anymore. And now my wife has Alzheimer's since 10 years.
And your sister, you kept a close connection with your sister?
Yeah, very, until the end.
Until the end.
My sister, very less emotional than me. And she remained all the time in Canada.
But you kept close, you were close.
We are very close. Every day we call each other. She came to visit many times. And she had one boy who passed away when he was 40 or so. Right. That's all. And that's what I wanted to tell you. There is a rabbi at, now my sister was something exceptional. Exceptional nurse, but non-stop, day and night, too much. And then she broke down. But we had a good time with them. But she has 2 cousins in Petah Tikva who come every week to visit.
Oh, wonderful.
They take care of us. All my problems and everything.
Very wonderful.
So when I came back, I came back after my mother. After 1 year, my mother died, and after divorce, I came back to France, looking for new horizons. So first I started, because the things had changed a lot in France. It's a cultural revolution. So I registered for a doctor degree in psychology. And I got a scholarship, fellowship from the Scientific Board of Science from Ottawa. And then about a year later, I met my wife. We got married. And then we have been shifting a lot between Paris and here. At one point, she got, stupidly, because of the doctorate, I had to be in Paris to do my research. So she started to accept a job to set up a Jewish old age residence, day and night, with me also, on the spot, living in the... This was a killing. And once you go back and you work for 6 years, after they wanted to make a business out of it. This was a refuge, which means the Jewish organization. The founders were idealists, but and all the children wanted to make money.
And it changes.
And she resisted until they threw us out. And then he said, don't worry. Now that you're 57, you don't have to work anymore. French social service.
Yeah.
You can get pension until 65, 80% of your salary, or 70%, without working. An employment bureau said, no, at your age, a nurse can always find a job. So we're free. So we got stuck another year, 7 years, 15 years. And then we were shifting all the time.
And Arye, did you ever go back to Germany? Have you ever been back to Germany?
First, I didn't want. But later on, I decided, because of restitution, because we had a house, not only in Berlin, but like a summer residence in Potsdam, on the lake, near the famous Imperial Palace, on the lake, beautiful. When the communists left, you know, the Jewish organization, they took over everything, they grasped everything. But there was a list of the people, and many people. The Germans were better than this, how are they called, Jewish organization, with the directors in New York were. The Germans were more considerate. They gave a deadline. Sometimes their grandchildren who didn't know about the palace left in Germany. I think after a few years, anyhow, there was no more, the house was burned out, but a very big ground. And I settled it, I sold it.
But was it very emotional going back to Germany? Was it difficult to go back?
It was, but it's amazing. It's amazing. When you come, and it's your birth language, and I went into a park, and I saw the German women, so compassionate, more than here with their children. It's unbelievable. Then comes back
the memories.
I had animosity, but also they invited us and my sister, flight, everything paid, for 8 days in Berlin, all the Berliners, the ex-Berliners. 8 days in a hotel, the airplane flight, and a lot of things organized. Concert, and to meet some of the politicians was very interesting. And Berlin is on the top now. They are very considerate. They do everything to please. I don't know the other cities. So surely it's amazing when you hear the language of your birth, but I don't have much sympathy.
But it's amazing because Arye, you went back to France. You returned to France and you lived in France. And they, I mean, the French, there was some good French and there was some not good French.
Look, about the French, wait a moment. Something blocking me.
But I think you've seen the good and bad. You've seen that there were good people and there were bad people, and especially in
the people who bought our ground. They built something beautiful. Now, they made a good deal, but still I got quite a big amount. They are both, they're so considerate. They call me all the time.
They still call you now? They're in touch with you?
And they tell me all the Jewish things which happens in Potsdam now. And they both, and she said that she learned in her school about Stefan Zweig and everything.
Wow.
They are good people. And when they invited us, they ordered specially kosher food for us.
That's
and all the
heartwarming.
holidays. Look. In Potsdam now, all the school children. It's amazing. Wait. Look, the Stolpersteine. The Stolpertage here. All the Jewish families where the school children find out their history, what happened to them, those who lived in different houses.
It's beautiful. Sure.
Look. It's amazing.
So this is the pamphlet. And they sent this to you? They sent it to you?
Yeah. Ah, look, here's a Stolpersteine, just near our house. Someone who left there, a doctor.
And they sent you the picture. Wow, that's wonderful. And look, they put a rose next to it. It's very beautiful. They put a roses next to the Stolpersteine. It's very nice. They put a rose. Arye, this has been unbelievable. You know, I just want to mention,
They want to eat.
okay, Arye, I just want to thank you. I just would like to thank you. Arye, I want to thank you very much. I know it's Corona, but thank you very, very much.
Okay.
And I am so grateful, Arye. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you very much.
It's just...
You must just be well at Mayveh Stream in good health and happiness and just mazel and brocha, Arye. And very good health, and words cannot express my appreciation. I'm very grateful.
I have some wonderful books, and this will be dispersed. I thought someone who really has an interest in history, they should be kept, these books. Few.
Arye, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I really mean it. I'm so grateful.
You don't need it.
I'm very grateful to you, Arye. Thank you very
Okay.
much. been met. And you must be well and healthy and gesund. And I'd made this stream till 120 with all of Hashem's blessings.
I regret that I didn't meet you before.
Well, I'm glad I met you now. It's never too late.
But look, I'm...
Arye, thank you very much. Arye, thank you very much.
weak.
Thank you. You're amazing.